And we're back. Okay. Chapter 4, page 59. Armor and battles. Medieval knights in Europe wore very heavy armor. They couldn't run and could hardly walk. Their helmets alone might have weighed over 40 pounds. We talked about that in the Castles book too. We talked about how the helmet was about the same weight as Jack, 40 pounds, a little kid on top of your head. In many ways, samurai armor worked better than the armor that knights wore. It was light enough to pack up neatly and carried around in a box. It weighed about 25 pounds. If need be, a samurai could put on his war gear quickly and race off to fight. Under the armor. The first thing samurai put on when dressing for battle was a robe or kimono. Then they pulled on baggy pants and thigh and shin guards. These acted as padding underneath the armor. The armor. That's an interesting picture. Samurai armor was made up of small iron scales sewn together with silk cords. A warrior moved easily in it, but it still gave him good protection. For those of you that don't have your book with you, there's the interesting picture I was talking about. It tells you about the different pieces to the armor. After taking off his thigh guards, the samurai was able to leap off his horse and climb over walls or wade through rice paddies. If an enemy's weapon cut his armor's silk cords, it could be easily mended. Sewed. Fixed. Headgear. Yikes. Man-to-man combat in the days of the samurai was brutal. Samurai wore gloves and iron collars for protection from swords, spears, and arrows. They wore an iron face mask as well. Helmets covered their heads and the back of their necks. Some helmets were amazing. They were shaped like devils, dragons, rhinoceros horns, and even eggplants. Oh, hey, cool helmet. It looks just like an eggplant. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have laughed at that. Annie said the eggplant is a symbol of good luck in Japan. I shouldn't have made fun of that then. Absolutely. I apologize. That means good luck. Hair. To keep their heads cool under their heavy helmets, samurai wore their hair in a top knot called a shomage. Top knot right here. I'm wearing that right now. Jack says sometimes samurai burned incense in their helmets to make them smell good. Okay. Before a battle, page 64, they shaved the top of their heads and left their hair long on the sides. Oh my. At times, samurai dyed their teeth black before a battle because they thought white teeth were ugly. They wanted to look their best if they were killed. Let's think about that for a minute. They thought white teeth were ugly. They thought that black teeth looked nice. So just in case they died, they painted their teeth black so they would look their best when they died. Foot soldiers. When a daimyo decided to go to war, he had to make sure he had enough soldiers. Because of the feudal system, all men and boys under a daimyo's rule were supposed to fight for him if they were able. Jack reads a proclamation in 1560. All men from the ages of 15 to 17 must sign up for war. Even monkey handlers have to fight. If you have no spears, bring hoes and clubs. Bring your garden tool to a fight. The men stopped their work in the fields or shops and signed on for training to be foot soldiers. Foot soldiers didn't ride horses or wear helmets like the samurai. Instead, they wore cone-shaped metal hats and fought on the ground using clubs, spears, bows and arrows, and different kinds of swords. The samurai got all the glory, but the peasant foot soldiers helped win the wars. So foot soldiers, they stayed on their feet on the ground. They weren't riding around on horses or anything like that. A battle begins. Sometimes as many as 30,000 soldiers marched off to battle with their daimyo. The men had little flags sewn on their clothes with their daimyo's colors or symbol. The flags helped the soldiers see who was on their side. Well, yeah, if there's 30,000 soldiers fighting, you probably don't know who all of them are. So it's probably important to have something on you that shows, oh, hey, that guy's part of my team. So you're not just, you know, going and attacking people that are fighting with you. 30,000, that's a lot of people. The daimyo and his generals carried large banners so their men could find them. During the fighting, drums and conch shells sounded out calls to the troops, telling them what to do. Every time I hear the word conch shell, I think of SpongeBob and the magic conch. Samurais preferred to fight in hand-to-hand combat with other samurai of the same rank. When the samurai arrived on the battlefield, they stepped out one by one to announce how important their families were. Then a samurai from a family just as important as theirs galloped over from a fight. So this is so cute. So Jack says, I, Samurai Jack, from a great family in Frog Creek, challenge any worthy opponent. And Annie says, because I, Annie, am from that same great family, we're not supposed to fight. So you can't fight your family members. That's not cool. The daimyo stayed back from the fighting and sent messengers to his commanders. He could see arrows whizzing through the air. He could hear the yells of his men as they fought. He could also hear the cries of the wounded and dying. At times, the daimyo himself came under attack and needed his bodyguards to protect him. Turn the page to meet some famous samurai. Minamoto Yoshi was a famous samurai who went into battle when he was very young. There is a story that he once chased after an enemy warrior on horseback and dared the man to have a poetry contest with him as they galloped along. Once Minamoto Yoshi and his soldiers saw birds circling overhead. First the birds flew down to the ground, then they quickly flew back up. This made the great warrior suspect that his enemies were hiding in that spot. He quickly ordered his soldiers to surround and attack them. They must have been shocked that he knew their hiding place. Some said that Miyamoto Musashi was a very messy samurai who didn't like baths, but he was the greatest swordsman ever. He had a duel with another samurai when he was only 13. A duel is when two people agree to fight each other with weapons. Miyamoto Musashi had over 60 duels. He also began a school for sword fighters and tested his skills against other great swordsmen. For one duel, Miyamoto Musashi quickly made a wooden sword out of a boat oar. After he killed his enemy, he leapt into a boat and rowed away to escape the man's angry friends. That's pretty awesome. The Yoshioka clan challenged Miyamoto Musashi to a nighttime duel. He arrived at the meeting place early and hid. This is a smart dude. When the Yoshioka clan arrived, he jumped out and fought dozens of them with a sword in each hand. Then he cut his way through the rice fields and escaped into the darkness. That dude is awesome. There are stories about a brave... Did I miss a page? No. There are stories about a brave samurai fighter named Tomo Gazen. Gazen means lady in Japanese. Tomo Gazen was a beautiful woman warrior. Oh, I love that. Legend has it that Tomo Gazen was a great rider, a skilled archery, bows and arrows, so she was good at that, and a deadly swordswoman. She is famous for taking part in the Battle of Owazu in 1184. She fought alongside her husband, Minamoto no Yoshinaka, who was battling to control the shogunate. He'd appointed her his head captain. Tomo Gazen is believed to have been a fierce warrior who cut off the head of at least one enemy. Minamoto no Yoshinaka died during the battle. Some stories say that Tomo later married again. Others claim that she became a Buddhist nun and withdrew from the world. So apparently nobody knows what happened to her. Oh, I love this chapter. You'll like it too. Chapter 5, The Shadow Warriors. Around the 1400s, daimyos began to look for ways to defeat their enemies without using armies. They started hiring ninjas for jobs that they wanted to be kept secret. Unlike samurai, ninjas didn't devote themselves to just one master. They worked for whoever paid them. Over the years, there have been folk tales about the ninjas' magical powers. Some stories claimed that they were invisible or could turn into animals or fly. These things aren't true. Over the years, it has been hard to learn much about the real ninjas. Because they worked undercover, a big part of their story will probably remain a secret forever. Page 78, who were the ninjas? Ninjas weren't one single fighting group. They came from different clans of mountain people. The mountains cut them off from the rest of the world and kept them from being watched. Annie tells us the word ninja wasn't used much until about 1964. Traditionally, Japanese called ninjas shinobi, which meant to do secretly. Sorry, holding my book up too far maybe. These tough mountain folk were close to the earth. They grew up knowing the ways of nature. All of this helped them in their work, especially in guerrilla warfare. Ninjas went to training schools in their villages. There, they learned the art of ninjutsu, or acting in secrecy. There are stories of ninja girls being trained as well, but no one is sure if this is true. Ninjutsu. As with the samurai, ninja children came from ninja families. They began to study the art of fighting ninja style at 5 or at 6. That's babies. Those are kindergartners. Man. At first, the boys played at wrestling and did things like walking across poles to learn balance. Page 80. As they got older, their training got stricter. Ninjas didn't need super strength. What they needed was to control their bodies and move without making a sound. Jack tells us that sometimes they wore special padded shoes that helped them walk quietly. To make their bodies strong and flexible, they did special exercises much like yoga or gymnastics. Ninja students learned to fight with a wooden staff called a bow. They also worked hard at learning how to throw knives, swim, run, and climb ropes. To practice breaking into buildings, young ninjas climbed high walls and crossed over roofs. To learn self-control, these ninjas in training climbed tall trees and sat in them for a long time without moving. But that wasn't all. They also learned how to jump from one high place, such as a building or a tree, to another. And they learned how to make medicines, poison people, and blow someone up with explosives. Yikes. Annie says ninja students practiced balance and strength by running up narrow boards that were propped against walls. Page 82, Smoke and Light. In some movies, ninjas disappear in a puff of smoke. They really had special smoke pots called naroshis. When they lit them, clouds of smoke filled the air and no one could see what the ninjas were up to. At times, ninjas also set off explosives to distract people. When ninjas needed light for a job, they carried a bucket with a candle in it. The candle was in a special holder that kept it upright no matter which way they turned the bucket. That's cool. If they turned the bucket on its side, the candle gave them enough light so they could set up explosives or draw maps. That's that picture right there. If they heard someone coming, they could turn the bucket upside down so the light wouldn't be seen. Love that. They're so cool, ninjas. Page 85, Chapter 6, The Art of Being Sneaky. Some of my friends know the art of being sneaky. You cute little people. Ninjas were experts at fooling people. They often used simple, everyday things for their work. Sometimes they took a walking stick with them, as many other people did, but because the stick was hollow, they could hide poison darts or knives in it. Took just one quick flick of their wrist to send a deadly weapon on its way. Jack tells us that ninjas carried medicine boxes that held medicines for themselves and poisons for their enemies. Ninjas are so cool. Page 86, Straw Hats. Japanese farmers often wore a large cone-shaped hat called a kasa. These hats were great hiding places for a ninja's knife or arrows. They also hid his face from view. This though. Okay? Okay. Flutes. Wandering flute players were also normal sights in feudal Japan. They played long bamboo flutes called, okay, ready? This is long. Shakuhachis. Shakuhachis. Say that. Shakuhachis. Interesting. Ninjas usually didn't make music with them. They used them for blowguns that shot poison darts, or they banged someone over the head with them, obviously. Chalk and rice. If a ninja wanted to leave a message for another ninja, he wrote it on a wall with a piece of chalk. After the other ninja read the message, he could easily erase it. Ninjas could also let other ninjas know where they were going by dropping colored rice on the ground to make trails. Page 90. Hiding in plain sight. Often a ninja's job was to spy on the enemy and report back to the person who hired him. When ninjas spied, they had to stay out of sight, obviously. Because they were so limber, ninjas could hide in very small spaces. They often curled up into a ball and slowed down their breathing so no one could hear them. They called this quail hiding because they looked like quails resting on the ground. Jack says some stories say that ninjas prepared for quail hiding by eating quail eggs. You know what a quail is? It's a kind of bird. Trees. Trees also made good hiding places. Ninjas would sit high up in the branches, hidden among the leaves, and stay there for hours. There are some stories that they tied their long sashes between the branches to make hammocks where they could rest without being seen. Jack and Annie in that picture are doing some underwater spying. Hiding underwater isn't easy. When ninjas needed to hide or spy, they sometimes hid in the water. They gathered up a water plant called duckweed and covered the surface of the water with it. The weeds hid their heads while they were in the water. Then ninjas could check on their enemies if they happened to pass by. All people saw was a pond covered in weeds. They didn't know that a ninja's eyes were watching their every move. Love them. Disguises. Ninjas often wore disguises. Sometimes they looked like Buddhist monks or priests, or sometimes they dressed up like women or farmers or flute players. Sometimes they seemed to be merchants with things to sell. If people met a man gathering wood in the forest, well, that could be a ninja too. You just never knew who was a ninja. The lantern trick. In 1558, a group of 48 ninjas got into Sawayama Castle by carrying lanterns they'd made to look just like the ones that soldiers in the castle used. Everyone was so confused that it gave the ninjas time to set fire to the castle and escape. Page 94, ninja business. Ninja families formed guilds or groups. Each family lived in a certain area and had its own ninja business. Depending on what they did, members of a ninja family had different ranks. A head ninja, or jonin, decided which ninjas should be hired and for what job. He gave orders to his assistants who planned how the work should be done. The ninjas who went on the missions were the genin. They were the lowest ranking ninjas and usually came from poor farming families. At times, the jonin sent his ninjas out to work in teams. They used special codes and passwords to communicate with each other. If the team climbed walls, they made a human ladder with their backs or by standing on each other's shoulders. If one ninja was dangerous, think how scary a team of ninjas can be. Okay, that's it. 4, 5, 6. Pause. 19 minutes in. Okay, see you guys in a minute for the rest of the book. Yay!